what does a day in the life of, and what are some jobs that are available within the city? You've got, like with Public Works, what jobs are available, and what other things are there, and the level of education that that our students would need, and are there any experiences that would be good for them to get while they're still in high school?
Okay, I'll be the shortest. My typical work day varies. As mayor, I am the official face of the city, as well as the official signatory for most governmental documents. I have no typical day. There's some days that I'm here for a full day and have evening meetings, and there's some days when I'm not here at all. Typically, I spend about 2 hours a day here at City Hall, plus whatever meetings that I need. As mayor, I'm always on call. I have been on literally at the top of the mountain in North Carolina and received city-related phone calls. I've been on the road, gotten phone calls. I've been at home. So basically, I'm always on call. My typical day involves, I come in, I first look to see if there are any constituent phone calls or letters I need to respond to. I sign any documents. I meet with people. I don't directly supervise our city staff. That's Scott's job. So both because he has the ability and by law. So, but Scott and I will meet frequently and discuss policy or things that are going on in the city. And then from there, it's basically, whatever needs they have for me. Sometimes I'm invited to meet dignitaries. If the governor comes to town or a developer, I'll sit in on those meetings. Basically, my job is to represent you all, the citizens, and bring that perspective to the table. So with that, in terms of talking specifically about careers and jobs, I'll turn it over to Scott and Brad.
Yeah, I guess I'll start so I give Brad a chance. Since this isn't his normal thing. But for me today, I start with this meeting. Earlier in the week, I started with, I'm usually, there's a liaison meeting of some sort of at, whether it's Main Street or our downtown development group or economic development group, whatever it is, I'm a liaison for that. So after this meeting, I'll be driving to Morrison to represent the city in a group discussion about our dispatching services. And then this afternoon, I get meetings to talk about with our city attorney to discuss something going on with the railroad in town. And then I have a 3 o'clock meeting with the community college representative. Tomorrow, I've got a couple different meetings. They both have to do with unions, 2 different unions, but getting together with the police chief to discuss language on a contract, and we're actually doing negotiations. Brad and I are with our Teamsters union in the afternoon. So it's very varied. That's why I actually like my career, is because no 2 days are the same at all. There's some general things that happen day to day, but for the most part, it is. I get to touch on a lot of different things as far as aspects of the city goes. Everything from the public works department to the police department to the fire. It's just there's always different things going on. Public citizens, work with the council. It's very varied. That's why I love the career I have, as stressful as it can be sometimes. But as far as open jobs, I think we have a high, I won't say high turnover, but we're having a very difficult time. It's not just us recruiting firefighters and police officers. And you may have seen this in the news. I think the last round Dixon had for police hiring, they had 2 applicants for police officer. We have just a couple too. We're looking at other contracts for police. Everybody's looking to figure out how they can steal somebody else. They're having a hard time recruiting new people into the profession. So now everybody's just working on either retaining what they have or trying to recruit away people from either smaller departments or going to urban areas, but not going to urban areas, but waiting for people from larger urban areas to come out to smaller rural areas where it's maybe not as controversial in the policing world. There's a little bit more, I guess, space for policing. So police officers is a big one for us, and related to that, the dispatch meeting I'm going to. Dispatchers is a huge thing, and working 911 it doesn't require a formal education of any sort, but it's a very, I guess it's one where you just have to deal with, I don't know how you teach this in school, but it requires composure and multitasking. A lot of everything we do in the dispatch office is automated as far as the program will tell you what to do, how to do it, how to get everything dispatched out. But it's obviously still a high stress situation. It's a 24/7 type of job. There's shift work involved, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And so we struggle there. As I said, fire service, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why that one's struggling so much, but it's not just here. Our list for hiring is pretty short, but that's another one where we struggle with. And again, there's no formal education for police or fire required. These are all kind of learning on a job type of situations where you go to the academy, you learn at the academy once you're hired. Things we want to come in. There's a testing process for both police and fire. It's a civil service type of test. And it doesn't, it's generally, I've seen the test before. It's not a lot different than some of your just regular aptitude tests in school overall. So it's that general learning, and that gets you ranked on the hiring list. And then once you're on the hiring list, it depends on what your score was for your academic scores, plus your physical agility scores, and then oral interview scores. So being prepared just to do those regular aptitude tests is a big part of it. Not that it relates necessarily to the job, but by state law, that's the hiring process for both police and fire. So that's important to have behind you. We've had some very good people that wanted to be firefighters. They worked as part-time paid firefighters, but just could not pass that aptitude test high enough to get ranked in the hiring list. So that's been a big issue. And I think for both code enforcement, I'll let Brad speak for the public works, but our candidates, when we've had to hire for turnover, we've had very few candidates. I mean, that's even before everything that has happened in the last year. We struggle to get good candidates with that. And again, it's not a formal education that we're looking for. Basic math helps as far as construction and some of those things that we do. But it's really being able to put together a well-written report on a code enforcement side. If you're writing up a report as far as following up the tickets or taking something to an administrative hearing, it's just being able to write succinctly, well, and with good grammar. And that's important on the code enforcement side. And yeah, it's not high level stuff that we're looking for. The last side is finance. We've got pretty good stability in finance, but I think obviously higher math is not needed, but a strong core of the basics is there. And generally we've had either just high school graduates or people with associate's degrees from SWAT coming through and staying here for several years in their careers. And we just have we have one person with a bachelor's degree in finance. That's the finance department director. And she's also got her CPA, which is very helpful too. So that's kind of a broad overview of everything except for public works. I think.
Brad, why don't you handle public work?
I was trying to figure out what a normal day in public works was. Normally starts out in the morning. We'll give orders to all the employees. We have 15 employees in the department. There's 12 what we call street workers, one mechanic, one clerk / labor, and then myself. Normally we'll get the 12 street workers going. They'll be assigned jobs for the day. After that, it's going through emails, voicemails. Any complaints residents may have, we'll reach back out to them and try to resolve it. We will meet with the residents on site if need to. I do work with the mayor and council on projects, future projects. But roads are normally road projects. Aren't just decided by one person. We usually have 2 or 3 people that'll put the list together and bring it to the council and try to agree on it. Meeting with contractors, jobs that are going on, making sure we have supplies to complete all the projects we have going, timing everything, prioritizing. As far as the public works, we normally nothing more than a high school diploma, which is fine. Anything past that is great. Construction, any trades you might have. We don't have a real big turnover in the department. We have had probably 4 or 5 people retire in the last 5 years. When we do take applications, we've always been successful with taking applications. I think the last time we took them, we had over 70 apps. For some reason, people want to work in public works. I don't know if it's being outside and actually not confined to 4 walls all day. I think that's all I have.
For opportunities from my perspective, from the governmental, are endless. All it takes is an individual who says, I want to make my area better than it was. And there are opportunities in local government. We have boards and commissions people serve on. I started off on library board. Library may not sound very sexy, but Gail and I both know how important libraries are. So I started there, moved into council. My thought had been when I retired from Rock Falls, I was going to go to Carolina, where the Smoky Mountains is where my family comes from. And I was going to spend the rest of my days in Carolina. Well, then the opportunity to be mayor came up, and I grabbed onto that. So there are all kinds of opportunities out there, and it's a matter of getting people to step forward. And I think that's something we see, police, fire, boards, commissions. People have to just be willing to step up and say, hey, I'm willing to take on a challenge. There was one question on here, what educational preparation would you recommend? I will tell you, I will apologize to my alumni because I did a pretty good job, I think, of teaching about protons, neutrons, and electrons. But as a teacher at Rock Falls, I did an absolutely crappy job of teaching people how to multiple source, critically think about things. We live in a society, my good friend Tom Borgia and I always laugh. People always like one-step math problems, but nobody likes multi-step math problems. Well, the same is true in government. People like to rely on one source of information, one opinion, and that's gospel. And the ability to critically analyze and do that is something, if I could go back in the classroom for a semester, I would work much more diligently on. Problem solving, critical thinking, going back to more than one source. I remember my English teachers when I was in high school, back when Moses was my classmate, really hammering on multiple sources. But that really is important. My job is to look at things from a 35,000 foot view. Brad and Scott are the ones that get down in the weeds and really get something done. But one thing I've noticed overall is I've never had, or I rarely had, someone come back and say, boy, the city did a crappy job on my sidewalk. Or the city did a crappy job keeping my sewer going. Now, they may have a problem with one of those two. But what I do routinely hear is basically what I call be nice to people skills. The things I've seen what have been problems have been personal interactive skills. People need to have, working in government, good people skills, team skills, communication skills. They need to learn what their role is on the team and how to play that role. My job is not to run public works. That's Brad's. Absolutely the worst thing in the world for the city of Sterling would be me trying to run public works. I know what my role is. Each of us does. And that's why things work so well. But those communication skills, in my position specifically, public speaking. I say prayers of thanks to Helen Harrington, my high school speech teacher, every night. Because she had something called extemporaneous speaking, where she would hand a student a piece of paper with a topic and say, all right, talk about this for 2 minutes. And I used to hate that. But you'd be amazed at the number of times I'm just standing around and somebody will turn and say, well, Mayor, do you have anything to say? Helen prepared me very well for that. So we also need to have flexibility. COVID has taught us there are going to be challenges on our horizon that we haven't even imagined yet. And we have to be able to think outside the box. My mantra has always been bold but not reckless. For example, our city theater was almost ready to be demolished. It was in such sad shape. And the city determined, and Scott with his leadership, that we didn't want that hole in the middle of our city and that it represented something to our culture. That was a bold move. What was going to be around a $500,000 project turned into about a $1.2 million project. But it was important to the city. So therefore, but we never, if you had said to me, Skip, are you going to be thinking about a theater when you're mayor? I'd say, what? No. So this ability to be flexible, to be resilient, to think outside the box, because things are going to change. You know, what kind of preparation, what skills do your people need, Brad, in public works to be successful?
Just a good work ethic is the big thing. Just be ready to work.
You know, by the way, when I meet with city leaders, that's something I hear has been a real paradigm shift. My generation lived to work. You know, we measured ourselves about our job and going and being successful in the job. The younger generations work to live. Lifestyle is more important. Life quality is more important. And I keep hearing from employers about those soft skills. Show up, do your job, make the effort. And we as teachers have that great opportunity to teach them that. You know, that's why we give them deadlines for assignments. That's why we, you know, want them to attend. That's why we insist they be in class on time. It's those soft skills. Scott, what about you?
I was gonna say, yeah, I think you hate to generalize or stereotype, but I think we have seen this a couple of times within different departments of people entering into the workforce and assuming that they deserve to be at the top right away. And that's been an issue in a couple of places. As Brad said, I think it's just being able to be ready to work and also take direction. And we've found people that do come in and they feel they know everything already. And I get that to an extent, but we've all been around the corner, around the block a few times around here, and it's just that's a big part of it. The communication we find that's an ongoing thing, I think. You know, there's not too many jobs that require the speaking that the mayor references, but I know certainly speech class. I could use more. I had them, but it was not my strong point. I still don't know that it is, but here we are today. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, it depends on, we have so many different wide variety of fields. It's again, the finance department, associate's degree in accounting is great. Police department, you know, it's not required, but I think sociology is a big thing. You don't need to have a criminal justice degree to be a police officer. It's how do you work with people, and that's where the sociology degrees tend to come in handy. I know they're not really good for a whole lot else. I don't think, except for being a professor of sociology, maybe. But yeah, just knowing how to work with people is a huge thing, and handling conflict and understanding where people have come from, their backgrounds is big in that. On the fire side, there are fire service institutes, there are fire academies, there are degrees and associate's degrees in fire science that people can go get, and that would be a nice base to move forward with, but again, not required. So that's yeah. I think communication, we talked about that, I guess, outwards, but also inwards. And being able to communicate with the supervisor, I think knowing how to handle conflict is a big thing, and how to appropriately handle conflict, and knowing where to go and who to talk to and how to talk to somebody is a big thing internally. And so it gets away from the technical things, but it's a big issue. Personnel is probably the biggest pain in the rear that any of us have to deal with in the day-to-day part of our jobs. And that's just a lot of that comes to how people communicate with each other and with their supervisors.
You'd be amazed at how, and Scott hit on a really important point. You know, the teamwork is critical. You'd be amazed at the number of times each of us has been approached by a citizen who basically said, you know, called us everything in the book and then wanted us to help them. You know, and the thing is, you know, 99% of the people in Sterling have their hearts in the right place. But about 10% of them weren't listening to their mamas when their mamas taught them how to talk nice. And so, you know, it is important for people to understand how to say something and how to disagree without being disagreeable. And I run into that all the time. It always amazes me. You'll call me everything you can think of, and then say, oh, by the way, but won't you fix my street for me? well, sure, beat me one more time. But, one thing that we all have here is you learn to develop a thick skin. That really is important because, even when you're helping people, I get to the point I don't even like to read Facebook because people who have no idea who I am, some of them don't even live in the area, are an expert about what type of person I am. But if you're going to work in government service, you've got to have a thick skin. If you're plowing the streets, you're going to have people come out and shake their fists at you because you put snow in their driveway. If you're the city manager, you're going to have people calling, constantly complaining. If you're the mayor, you'll have people constantly complaining. So people have to learn that, to develop that thick skin. You also have to learn in our business that there's a lack of privacy. Now, each of us had varying degrees, but we're still public people. So if you're going to work in government, someone knows you work for Public Works, I can guarantee you everybody in your family who knows you is going to complain about some of the roads. If you're the mayor, you hear about the roads and you hear about 100 things. And there's no privacy. The story I tell, the ultimate lack of privacy, I was in a bathroom one time, going to the bathroom, the man steps up next to me and says, "You're the mayor of Sterling," and starts talking to me. It's like, you can't give me 30 seconds, So, and if we do anything in public, if they see me screw up, or Scott or Brad, that's not Scott Schumacher screwing up. It's Scott Schumacher, the city manager. So they got to be, if you're going to work in government, you got to have a thick skin and be aware that you lose privacy. You all know that as teachers. You go to the store, everywhere you go, people, recognize you. And if they have a complaint about the schools, who do they talk to? So that's an important thing, that thick skin and that ability to talk to people.
What do you find is the most challenging in your jobs? The most challenging aspects?
For me, it's managing expectation. We spend, about $3 million a year on roads?
Yeah, they went recently, yes.
$3 million a year on roads. The First Avenue rebuild that we're doing that goes from 5th Street to Lefevre is costing about $1.25 million. Twice that. 2.4 million, excuse me. $2.4 million for an 8/10 of a mile. That's not enough. And what people don't understand is that, there is no free money. And so managing expectations. The other thing that's challenging to me is that, no one wants to give you credit for having a brain. If I could solve world poverty, I would have done it by now. If I could solve the road issues or whatever issue, but things are one thing I've learned as mayor is things are so much more complex. We get hammered on the Lawrence building here on First Avenue all the time. It's not just a matter of going in and throwing some paint on the building. That there's nothing that's cheap, easy, or quick in government work, and getting people to understand that is a real challenge. Getting people to separate opinion from fact. I heard English teachers, if there was any phrase I would abolish from our language, I heard, because I heard is wrong 99% of the time. And I would encourage people to always call. But yeah, managing expectations, that was hard for me. Those who know me in your group know that I'm really not a patient person. I'm pretty aggressive, and having to learn that you just can't solve that housing issue by saying it's important was difficult for me to learn. And when you talk to government people and they tend to sound like they're giving you excuses. They're not, they're explaining reality. You know, I will be long gone from this earth before the riverfront is done. We're making strides, but it's not going to, you know, it took 100 years to get it in the shape it's in, and it's going to take time to get it out. So those are my challenges. Scott, what are your biggest challenges?
I think you put that well, and it's managing expectations because we have our own people to answer to, and we can only do so much with either the limited amount of resources the city or size has, or with the rules that are imposed on us by state, which is who we answer to an extent. So I think, that's our biggest issue. I think this gets away from education. I think our other biggest issue is trying to communicate with people outwardly in this day and age, because in the past, somebody ran the newspaper, everybody knew about it. Well, now nobody's subscribing to the newspaper. The newspaper's not covering anything when people are buying it. Nobody's listening to local radio anymore. Everybody's streaming everything. So getting our message out has become very difficult for us. So that's actually, I kind of see that as one of our biggest challenges, because when we're trying to be transparent, it's difficult if we can't let people know what's going on. You know, people trash the newsletters, e-newsletters don't get read. It's very difficult to communicate what we're doing. And I think so managing expectations is part of that too, because we can't let people know what we're doing. So let them know what they can expect. It's very difficult for us. And so those two things. And again, lately, Brad's not had a problem, but hiring is a very big concern to me. And it's good for the employees because it's going to push wages up. It's just because of the supply and demand of it all. But we don't have profits to use to pay people with. So it becomes a challenge on the revenue side, is how are we going to pay higher wages that we have to pay in order to keep recruiting people to come work for our organization.
You know, one of the biggest things for a city is to overpromise and underdeliver. When someone puts a sign out that says, mission accomplished, or we're going to have all your roads done by 2023, and then it doesn't happen, that really lowers credibility. So to be aware that you never promise what you absolutely can't deliver. Brad, what are the biggest challenges you face?
I think both of you kind of hit on a lot of it, the process of how to do things, the way we have to do things. It's not just we want to put new lights in the park, we call a contractor to do it. We have to go out with the bids. We have to make sure we're paying prevailing wage, make sure we're following all the right paths. And I think a lot of convincing the residents that we can't get it done that quick. It's, yes, we want to do your road, but it has to be engineered. We have to inspect the sewer underneath and make sure that it's good. We don't want to put a new road over bad sewer. We want to make sure there's not drainage issues. We're not going to flood anybody out. But just all trying to get people to understand that it's not a quick process. The other thing I find difficult sometimes is managing the different personalities in the department. I can go to one employee and tell them one thing, but if I say that to another employee, they're offended. Just trying to keep everybody happy, but still get the job done can be a challenge at times.
So it goes back to, I think a lot of the technical learning is on the job. So it's coming in with the basic skills is what we're really looking for. That kind of goes back to that.
Gail, go ahead, next one.
Does anybody in the group have questions?
Well, I'll say we're also short on engineers. We don't hire engineers, but we hire consulting engineers, and they're struggling to find people, and that puts our projects behind too, because we get put in the order of wherever the next project is. And so as engineers are available, that's how our projects get delivered. And so if you haven't spoken with civil engineering groups, I would highly encourage you to do that as well. I know they're going to have a whole different level of what's required going in, obviously a high level of math for that. But yeah, we're certainly a problem with the lack of engineers too.
One thing I would stress to your students too is the opportunities that are out there are unbelievable. The challenges we face. When I was in high school, you went to college, you went to the military, or you just got a job, and everything was kind of limited. And if you were female or minority, your chances were even less. Now there are so many opportunities out there in the business world, we're facing changes. Climate change is real and it's having an effect. It really is an exciting time for students to be looking down the road. So they need to have an open mind. When someone said, that when I was teaching, the statistic was that 80% of freshmen in college changed their major. I know I did. I started off as I was going to be a mechanical engineer and a naval officer, and I found out pretty quick that wasn't going to be my career. People, to stress your students to be open-minded, grab the opportunities. As a teacher at Rock Falls, if you had said to me, someday you're going to be wearing the blue and gold and be mayor of Sterling, I'd have thought you were crazy as could be. I could never imagine that, but the opportunity came out here. So, get your students to be open-minded, to be willing to say, hey, I can learn. When I first came to Rock Falls, the superintendent said, we need a football coach. I said, I know nothing about football. Well, that wasn't what he wanted to hear. He wanted to hear that I could learn to be a football coach, which I did. Not a very good one, but I learned. But the point is to stress to them to keep that open mind, that they're not going to, there are going to be those opportunities out there. Public works, and every job is challenging. Public works is not leaning on a shovel, just throwing some tar in a hole. There are a lot of skills to making sure that that's done right. Being a city manager, Scott is juggling 20 balls in the air at any one time. So, tell them to be open-minded and to be available. Teach them to be leaders. Encourage them to get involved. That was one thing that I had noticed at the end of my teaching career, and I hope it's changed. But getting young folks or getting old folks to get involved and say, okay, yeah, I can do that. I'm willing to try to do that. And to be leaders in your organization. Leadership is important. And those teamwork skills, I'll come back to that again. Teamwork.
Yeah, I go back and starting at the bottom and working your way up and not expecting to start at the top. And I think just before this meeting started, our electrical inspector was in here, and his brother's an electrical contractor in town. And we really only have, for commercial projects, 2 real electrical contractors, and they're both backed up, as he was saying. He said his brother would like to be able to hire another apprentice, and they can't find one. So, and these are jobs. I mean, and I know all of you probably know at this point, but 20 years ago we pushed people away that everybody used a 4-year education. And there are 6-figure careers out there that if you are a skilled and trained plumber, electrician, carpenter that's gone through the proper apprenticeships, there are 6-figure jobs out there that require very little as far as formal training, that don't require student loans. There are guys making a lot more money than I am out here with my master's degree. and they love what they do. And so if we can get people pushed into that, again, I don't know that, I don't know, Brad, I have a little more familiarity, but again, these skilled trades guys, we're not talking again 4-year degrees. I don't even know that it requires a 2-year degree in some of these cases. It just gets, getting the apprenticeship going with skilled labor programs is it. And we're missing those. And that affects us. I mean, we go out for bid on projects. We're down to 2 bidders on some, depending on the nature of the contract. And it's an issue for us.
Scott had a good point. You can't start, and we know that in teaching because we have salary schedule. You can't start at the top of the career pay scale first year out. And sometimes, that's an issue. People think, they see someone like Scott or Brad and say, oh, they're making good money. I'm going to do that. Well, yeah, they each work their way up the ladder. I would also encourage you to teach your students gratitude. Things are not perfect in Sterling, but I can take you to places that are a whole lot worse. So to teach your students to have gratitude for what they do have, and for the opportunities. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago. Since the pandemic started, we have 1,000 fewer working force people available. Part of that is population, part of that is moving away, part of it is people realigning their priorities. Why am I going to work for $30,000 a year and have childcare costs me 20. So people are realigning. So there are those opportunities out there. Scott is right on it. They're good paying jobs. Manufacturing is not the steel mill that we remember from 50 years ago, or I remember from 50 years ago. It's a much cleaner, safer environment. So again, teaching your students to know about opportunities and to grab them when they come.
And the opportunities aren't always about how much they're making. I know when I started with Public Works, I didn't just look at the wages. I also looked at, the insurance that we were getting, the retirement that was ahead of me. I looked at the big picture instead of just at the wages, and that kept me around for 24 years so far, and maybe a few more. I haven't decided.
None of you went into teaching because it was money. So Brad's right on target.
Well, thank you very much, Scott and Skip and Brad. We really appreciate everything that you've shared with us this morning. And we've learned quite a bit about Sterling and your positions. So thank you.